Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn. In today's video, I have a fun one. We're going to be doing not one, but 4 different cards using the Bountiful banners from Honeybee Stamps. Now this is a prefab design, which means the actual layout of the stamp and the design is all done for you, but I'm going to show you how to use it in different ways and make it your own. So again, I'm going to be using the Bountiful banners stamp, the stencil, and the Bountiful banners impression here. Now I will also be using the Bountiful banners die, but I wasn't sure at the time, so these are the products that I pulled out. And since we're going to be using this impression plate here, I thought I would try it with the Letterpress cotton card panels. So the cotton card panels are meant for letterpressing. They're meant to receive impressions really well, so I thought, why not give it a shot? Now the problem with the cotton card panels is when you're die cutting, they're softer, right? Cardstock is heavier pressed, more tightly pressed. And these cotton card panels, my top plate has a lot of marks on it. It's really easy to transfer those marks to your cotton paper. So what I'm going to do is I've got the universal platform here. I'm going to remove that B plate and I'm going to replace it with my Glimmer shim. Now that is just a little bit thinner, so it's going to provide enough pressure to actually cut, but it's not going to provide so much pressure that it forces that cotton panel up into my top plate and transfer any marks from my top plate. So this is really important for us in this project because we're going to be stenciling. And if we had any marks on our paper, any stray like indentations or cut marks, the ink would catch in those areas and you'd definitely be able to see them. So you can see here, it gave enough pressure to cut through this cotton panel, but not so much that it forced that paper up into the plate, and I have a completely clean surface here to do my stenciling. Again, since I'm using the cotton card panels, I like to do the die cutting first and then the impression plate. So I'm just going to line this up, I'm going to tape it together, and we're going to use the suggested sandwich here on our universal plate here, our universal, what is this called? Universal system? Universal plate system. And we're going to use the one for embossing, which means I'm going to put down my A, my B, my plate, my paper, my E, and then my D plate. So that's my sandwich for running this through. And as I suspected, this is going to give me a beautiful, beautiful transfer of that impression. I did compare it next to cardstock, and because this cotton is a little bit softer than your cardstock, the impression you get is twice as deep. It's actually stunning. Look at that. You can see every little bit of that detail. And this is perfect for giving that blind letterpress look, which is letterpress without ink. But that got me thinking, I wonder if I can use the Letterpress ink with this plate and get an ink transfer letterpress. So I grabbed my Bark Letterpress ink and I'm going to ink this up similarly to how I would do a Letterpress plate. I'm just going to be very mindful that this design is not quite as deeply etched as a Letterpress plate. So it is easier to get the ink in the background there to transfer that ink to the areas you don't want to. So you want to be light-handed with this, but firm enough to actually get the ink on the plate. Anywhere I got it where anywhere I got ink I did not want it, I just used a soft cloth here and wiped it away. Okay, so now it's time to get this plate onto my paper. I want to be careful and I want it to stay in place. So I'm adding some washi tape to the edges here and creating little tabs that I can fold over. I'm going to carefully pick up this plate and I'm going to gently and decisively drop it onto the panel. I don't want it to move around. I want it to stay in place, so I'm going to hold it while I fold that washi tape over on either side, and this is going to hold these two firmly together so that they don't shift or move around. I don't want that ink to smear. I'm going to go ahead and put my plate, my little sandwich here, the same as an embossing sandwich, run this through, and you guys, it worked. It's not as crisp and clean and clear as an impression plate by any means. I mean, a Letterpress plate by any means, but it's definitely usable and it looks good, especially since we're going to be ink blending over this. Now, the main reason that I don't think it's as perfect is because this is a smooth steel impression plate and the Letterpress plates do have like a velvety, suede-ish texture to them, so they're meant to hold and receive that ink. But here you can see these results are they're usable, especially like I said, since we're going to be stenciling over it anyway. So definitely take that chance and try different things with your supplies. You never know what will work. So I ended up making 4 of these panels. 2 of them I inked and 2 of them I left as a blind letterpress, and now it's time to do our stenciling. The Bountiful Banners stencil has 5 layers, and each of the leaves are broken into 2 separate layers. So you get 2 colors on each leaf, which is actually, it turns out to be really beautiful. It gives you this gorgeous pattern. I'm using Distress inks, and for this first 2, I'm going to use Abandoned Coral on my flowers, and then I'm going to just hit the edges here with a little bit of Wild Honey. For my first set of leaves, I'm going to use Crushed Olive and Mowed Lawn. So for the first stencil, I'm going to come through it with Crushed Olive, and I'm going to hit it with just a little bit of Mowed Lawn to get a little blend there. And then for the second layer of those leaves, I'm going to do the exact same thing. This is just going to give me a beautiful blend from a yellow green to a blue green. Now the second type of leaf here, I used a little bit of iced spruce, and then I'm adding in a little bit of sapphire? Something sapphire. I'll have everything linked in the description box below. But this is just going to give me a very vibrant but fall-ish color palette, which I actually end up turning more summery, but you know, whatevs. I was going for fall. The next 2 will be fall, I promise. I added a little bit of seedless preserves for my flowers. And now for my banner, I'm just using what's left on my brush here and just lightly inking in this banner. This is going to leave plenty of room there in the center for me to stamp my sentiment, and it'll be legible. Isn't that gorgeous, you guys? I love how the impressed areas grab more of the ink so they really start to show up. Now, since I did not do an inked impression on this, I just grabbed I think this is a Jelly Roll pen in glitter, silver glitter, and I'm just going over everywhere there was an impression left from the plate. And now it's time to add our sentiment. So I'm using the sentiment from the Bountiful Banner stamp set, and then I'm going to ink that up with the bark ink as well and stamp that into place. I kind of liked using the brown instead of the black. I'm on a kick, you guys. I'm kind of using brown for my sentiments instead of black right now. I don't know what's wrong with me, but hey, I like it. All right, so for the next one, I've started off the flowers here. I used antique linen. I wanted to do almost a white type of flower. I was definitely like, we're going autumn here. We're going autumnal with these colors. So antique linen for my flowers. Now I'm using a little peeled paint for one set of my leaves. For the other set of leaves here on this same stencil, I'm going to come in with a little bit of frayed burlap. This one is a Distress Oxide. And I'm going to add that in, and then I'm going to come over that with a little bit of aged mahogany. Now this is going to give me a warm reddish brown, which we know leaves reddish brown in the fall. They're beautiful. But I had to get away from green. I was like, you can't make all the leaves green, Dawn. So we went with the reddish brown. Then for the other leaves, I've added in against a little bit of iced spruce, which is going to give us that bluish green. But then I decided to add that aged mahogany in with those as well. And this is going to give me a grayish, purplish color. It's grayish. It's beautiful. I love this color palette. Added a little bit of that frayed burlap again for my flower centers. And I love this color palette. It turned out so good. So, all right, let's take a look at the 4th panel, because the first 2 are identical. Then we had this one, and now we're on to the 4th one. These flowers, I started off with aged mahogany because I wanted to do like a purpley red flower. So I'm going to start with the aged mahogany. I'm hitting it harder around the edges and letting it blend into nothing there in the center. Then I'm going to take seedless preserves, and again, I'm going to come around just the edges of this flower. So we're going to hit right over the area we just did and blend that purple into that red, and it's going to give us this wineish color just around the edges. So pretty. Leaves were all the same, crushed olive and peeled paint. And this time I added in a little scattered straw and wild honey for some of my leaves. I know, I told you, I was like, Dawn, you can't do all the leaves green. So now we're doing some yellowish leaves. And I think that this card, I think, turned out to be my favorite in the end. You'll see how it looks. little seedless preserves, and then again, whatever's left on that yellow blender brush I use to color in my banner. All right, so now it's time to turn all of these into cards. We've got our 4 panels. Let's take a look at them. So we've got one autumn option here. We've got the one we just finished. And then we've got these 2 that are pretty much the same. One is blind letterpressed and the other one I inked the panel. You can also see on the one on the left, I used the die from the Bountiful Banners die that cuts in between each of the elements. And on the other one, I just used the outer die, and that leaves it as one solid panel here. So currently all 4 of these are pretty much the same design, but we're going to make each one unique. Starting with this one. So we're going to take that background and we're going to split it, and we're going to create an all over background design, and we're going to pair it with a bold sentiment. So I've pulled out the Give Thanks stamp and die. I love this stamp set. It is a gorgeous font and it just absolutely beautiful. Can't say enough good things about it. So we're going to heat emboss it. I'm going to treat my cardstock here with the rabbit hole embossing tool, and I'm going to use my mini MISC to stamp this out. We're going to ink it up with Versamark ink. And I am going to stamp this 2 times, I think. It was either 2 or 3 times. It's a big image, so I want to make sure I got good coverage. Pour on our gold embossing powder. Make sure that we get that all over. Tap off the excess, and then I'm going to use my heat tool to melt that. Melting embossing powder still gets me every time. Love it. But you can see how gorgeous that sentiment is. We're going to use the coordinating die here to cut that out. And then I did cut an extra one just to glue behind it to make it a little bit thicker there. There is also a stencil for this Give Thanks stamp and die here. I used that to color in my little elements there. This one goes really quick. It's such small little areas, but you could also use a Copic marker or even colored pencils to color that in if you wanted. Used the same colors to match my background. So now I've grabbed some light green cardstock here and made a card base. And then I've taken that background and I've actually cut it in half. Like I said, we were going to split it. I'm going to bring it, instead of making it one whole background panel, it was a little busy sitting over top of the image as a whole. So what I've done is cut it in half, and I'm going to bring it in from the top and the bottom. I'm going to get the arrangement just right to where it kind of flows and creates that S. And the flowers are going to be tucked into areas that just kind of make sense. Make it all look like one. And as always, I spent way too long toiling over exactly how I wanted it to go, but this is the arrangement that I ended up with. So once I've got that figured out, all I have to do is adhere everything. I used some Honeybee Be Creative liquid adhesive to adhere the top and bottom florals there. And then I used some of their Be Creative foam strips to adhere my sentiment. I added the foam where it would be attached to just the card base, and then a little bit of liquid adhesive where the sentiment is going to overlap those florals. Ultimately, I did end up adding some gems to the background, and then I also used some of the leftover pieces that I trimmed off to add to the outside. And we'll take a look at this finished card at the end. So next up, we've got this very clean and simple card. I think this one is way different than the others, and I really like how it turned out. So I've got that full back panel here, and then I've taken a little panel here, and I've used the burlap 3D embossing folder and just embossed a white piece of cardstock. I'm going to again trim this one. So we're going to cut pieces off of it, and we're going to come in from the left and the right. Before we came in from the top and the bottom, this time we're going to do the left and the right. I love that little bit of added texture to the background because the card is so simple, and we're not going to be using a ton of the floral elements there. That extra three-dimensional texture in the background really helps to carry this card. So I'm using some liquid adhesive, trimming off the excess, and then we're going to mat this on a white card base as well. You could honestly leave it with just the one cluster and put a larger sentiment, but I knew that I wanted just another little portion there on the lower right side just to, kind of balance it. So we're going to adhere this in place again with some liquid adhesive and then trim off the excess on the top and the bottom. All right, so here I've got my base. God, I do really, really like how this one turned out. I've got that base done, and I used the banner die in the, which one is this in? This is in the Bountiful Banners die set, not the impression plate, but the die set. The banner in that one is just a little bit larger. So I've cut it twice, once from white and once from a green cardstock, and I've heat embossed the thank you sentiment in white onto the green one, and that is from the Bountiful Banner stamp set. We're going to adhere this in place and just trim off the part that's hanging over. For the matching panel, the one that we did the inked impression with, I'm going to use the design as intended and then just adhere it to a card base. So you can see this as is a gorgeous design, and it's really quick and easy to make a card. You can switch up your color palettes. But again, I really wanted to stretch this prefab design. So let's take a look at another one that goes completely different. And this one is another, I can't choose between this one and the simpler one as my favorite. I had a really hard time choosing, you guys. All right, so I've taken the Sweet Stacker ovals dies and I've cut two concentric sizes, one just a little bit smaller than the other. I used that same light green cardstock and then a white one. So we're going to create a central focal point, and then our panel there, we're going to push it to the back as like pattern paper maybe. So I've grabbed the Lovely Layers Autumn Bouquet, and I'm going to use the wheat stalk and then those little flowers to create a little hand-tied bouquet that's going to serve as our focal point. So I've cut these from white, and we're going to ink blend them to match the background colors. So for the wheat, we're going to use the Scattered Straw and the Wild Honey. I'm just going to start off using whatever's left on my brush, and I'll pull out the inks as I need them. And then for the, I don't know what this is. I think it's supposed to be like Queen Anne's lace, or it's not quite as big as Queen Anne's lace. I'm not sure what type of flowers these are supposed to be, but it doesn't matter. We'll just color them up to match our card. So I'm going to add green to the stems. I'm going to add a little bit of that aged mahogany to the flowers here, and then we'll just adhere everything together. You don't have to do anything over the top when it comes to blending these. Just a simple blend will do. I'm going to adhere my panel to my card base, and we're doing this just flat to our card base because we're going to pop up that oval with a little foam tape eventually. But first I'm going to hand tie my little bouquet here. So I'm going to grab my flowers here, and I'm going to add just a little bit of twine. So I'm grabbing some jute twine. I'm going to cut off a length, but before I tie it, I'm going to glue my elements together. So I'm going to take some Be Creative liquid adhesive here. I'm going to put a little dot underneath these stems, then I'm going to pinch it between my fingers. That's just going to help hold them together so that they don't slip when I go to tie them with the twine. I'm just going to wrap that twine around and tie a simple bow. I like how this one has much more of a rustic feel to it, but it's not overly rustic. It's almost a Victorian feel. That aged mahogany mixed with the seedless preserves creates this beautiful like dusty rosy color, and it looks gorgeous with that scattered straw and the wild honey mix. All right, so once I've got my little bouquet hand tied here, I can adhere that in place again, a little liquid adhesive and then some foam tape. I wanted to go pretty simple for the sentiment. I didn't want it to overpower our bouquet, and the Heartfelt Hello had a bunch of great, it has a bunch of great sentiments in it. This is one of my favorite sentiment sets. So I grabbed that, what did I use? With Heartfelt Thanks, and I stamped that in the bark ink and then die cut it using the coordinating dies. I'm going to add a little liquid adhesive to these flowers to hold them all together here at the top so that nothing gets caught, and then adhere that to the oval with liquid adhesive. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to add some foam tape to the oval and adhere that in place. Finally, I'll just add the sentiment, and then this card is done. So let's go ahead and take a look at all of the cards and review them. I think that these turned out even better than I had hoped. All right, so here we go. This is the card we just finished. I added a few gems, and remember, I will have everything linked in the description box below. So if there's anything specific you're looking for, make sure to check there. I love, love, love this color palette. I'm gonna have to revisit this one again. I also love the way this one turned out. I love the muted colors. I think that light green background sets off the white without creating too much contrast. And I feel like this one has a modern vibe, and then that hand lettering just really, really sets it off. You can see here how that ink grabbed into the blind letterpress areas and really stands out. Then we have our super clean and simple one. I was surprised at how clean that design came out, especially compared to the other two. It just goes to show that even though you have one set design, depending on how you use it, will really influence the overall style and outcome of the card. I like this one just as much as I like the others, even though it is so much simpler. And then, of course, this is the design used as intended in its entirety. And again, I'm floored by how different each one of these cards actually looks, even though it does use the same basic prefab design. So it just goes to show that with a little bit of ingenuity and creativity, you can really stretch a stamp set and give it a totally different look. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. Don't forget, as always, all the products are listed down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.